Title: Cinderella 2, Warned You. Once upon a time, in a kingdom beyond the horizon, Cinderella had found her happily ever after, or so it seemed. Her wedding to Prince Charming had been the most glorious event the kingdom had ever witnessed. But beyond the glittering towers of the castle and the enchantment of the royal life, shadows were beginning to creep into their fairy tale. 2 years had passed since the wedding, and while Cinderella tried her best to embrace her role as a princess, she could feel a restlessness growing within her. The duties of court life, endless balls, and the pressure of being a royal felt more like a golden cage than the freedom she once desired. Even her marriage with the prince had begun to feel distant. Charming had become preoccupied with the affairs of the kingdom, barely noticing the changes in Cinderella's demeanor. Every day felt the same: lavish dinners, formal meetings, and the constant pressure to smile through it all. As much as she loved the prince, the life she once dreamed of was losing its luster. She missed the simplicity of her old life, the days when she could wander the fields, feel the earth beneath her feet, and lose herself in a daydream. Now, everything was orchestrated, measured, and stiff, like the silk gowns she was forced to wear. Charming, too, was changing. The man who had once swept her off her feet with his charm and kindness was now more like a ghost, consumed by the kingdom's endless problems. He would wake before dawn and return late at night, his mind always somewhere else, on treaties, alliances, or the latest issues at court. They hardly spoke, and when they did, it was only about matters of the kingdom. There were no more stolen moments of laughter or quiet evenings under the stars. Cinderella often found herself wandering through the empty corridors of the castle, her heart heavy with a growing sense of loneliness. She felt trapped between the girl she once was and the woman she was expected to be. No one told her that being a princess could feel so isolating. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft pink glow over the castle, Cinderella stood on the balcony, gazing at the distant hills. She had always imagined that life after the slipper would be one of endless joy, but instead, she felt like she had traded one set of chains for another. "What's wrong with me?" she whispered to herself, her fingers gripping the cold stone of the balustrade. She wanted to talk to Charming, to tell him how she felt, but every time she tried, something stopped her. Maybe it was the fear of burdening him with her insecurities, or maybe it was the nagging doubt that he wouldn't understand. After all, she had everything anyone could dream of. Why wasn't it enough? But deep down, Cinderella knew that it wasn't just the duties of court life that weighed on her. There was something more, a deeper yearning that she couldn't quite place. It was as if a part of her soul had been left behind in the ashes of her former life, and no matter how much she tried to move forward, it kept calling her back. As the night deepened, Cinderella sighed and turned away from the view. She made her way back to her chambers, where her maids awaited her with another gown for the next royal banquet. She barely acknowledged them as they dressed her, her thoughts miles away. She needed something to change, anything to break the monotony. But for now, she would have to endure, as she always had. After all, this was the life she had chosen. Or was it? The sound of the clock striking midnight echoed through the castle, a solemn reminder of the passing time. As the final chime rang out, Cinderella felt a strange chill run down her spine, as if the wind itself were whispering something to her. a warning of what was to come. One chilly evening, while Cinderella sat alone in the grand library, flipping through the pages of an ancient book, a soft voice broke the silence. "You are not where you belong," the voice whispered. One Cinderella froze, her fingers hovering over the delicate pages. The flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows on the walls, and for a moment, she wondered if her mind was playing tricks on her. The castle had been so quiet lately, almost too quiet, and this voice, this presence, seemed to come from nowhere. She looked around, her heart quickening. The vast library was empty, its towering shelves filled with forgotten histories and ancient tomes. The windows were shut, the curtains drawn, leaving only the faintest glow of the moon filtering through the cracks. "Who's there?" Cinderella called out, her voice barely above a whisper. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. She waited, but no one appeared. Just when she was about to dismiss it as her imagination, the voice returned, this time clearer, closer. "You don't belong here," it said again, more insistently. Cinderella stood abruptly, her pulse racing. She scanned the room, searching for the source of the voice, but saw nothing. No shadows moving, no figures lurking in the darkness. Her eyes landed on the book she had been reading, an old, dusty volume about the kingdom's forgotten legends. The pages had stopped on a chapter about ancient magic and long-lost realms. The words on the page seemed to glow faintly in the dim light, almost as if they were calling out to her. She squinted, leaning closer. There, in the margins of the text, were faint, handwritten notes that hadn't been there before. They formed a single sentence. "Beware the past. It's coming for you." A chill ran down Cinderella's spine. She slammed the book shut, her breath coming in shallow gasps. What was happening? Who was speaking to her? And why now? She rushed toward the door, eager to leave the library and shake off the unnerving feeling. But before she could reach the handle, the voice spoke again, louder, firmer. "Your past is not done with you, Cinderella. The clock is ticking." She whipped around, eyes wide. "What do you mean? Who are you?" Her voice wavered, a mix of fear and frustration. "What do you want from me?" For a long moment, there was nothing but silence, the tension in the air thick and suffocating. Then, softly, almost as if carried on the wind, the voice replied, "You will see soon enough." Without warning, the candle beside her flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. Cinderella's heart leapt into her throat. She fumbled for the door, her hands trembling. The cold of the night seemed to seep into her bones, and she could hear the faintest ticking sound, like the slow, rhythmic beat of a clock hidden somewhere in the depths of the castle. She burst out of the library, her breath coming in panicked gasps as she hurried down the hallway. But even as she fled, the words from the book echoed in her mind. "Beware the past. It's coming for you." What past? Her childhood had been full of hardship, yes, but she had left that life behind when she married the prince. Or had she? Could it be her stepmother? Her stepsisters? Had they returned to seek revenge? She hurried to her chambers, her mind racing with questions. But one thing was clear. Something was coming for her. Something tied to her past, and it wasn't going to be easily ignored. Startled, she looked around, but no one was there. The voice continued, "Your past has unfinished business, and it is coming for you." Cinderella stood up, her heart pounding. She had spent years avoiding any thoughts of her old life, her cruel stepmother, and her stepsisters. But the eerie voice left her unsettled, awakening memories she had buried long ago. The next morning, Cinderella's unease only grew. As she walked through the castle gardens, a messenger rushed toward her. He handed her a sealed letter, written in ink that shimmered like moonlight. The seal bore a strange symbol she didn't recognize. Opening it, her eyes widened in shock as she read the words, "Beware the clock. Time is running out." She rushed to Prince Charming, but before she could show him the letter, an explosion rocked the castle gates. The ground trembled as clouds of smoke billowed through the air. Guards shouted, and the prince drew his sword, running toward the danger. Cinderella followed, her mind racing. At the castle's entrance stood a figure she never expected to see again. Her stepsister, Anastasia, but different, darker. She was draped in an armored gown of black silk, her eyes glowing with a cold fire. By her side was a powerful sorcerer, his face hidden beneath a hood, his hands crackling with dark magic. By her side stood a figure even more terrifying, a powerful sorcerer, his face obscured by a hood. His hands crackled with dark magic, casting eerie shadows on the stone walls of the castle. The air around them seemed to hum with malevolent energy, thick with the promise of chaos. Cinderella's heart pounded in her chest as she struggled to understand what was happening. Anastasia's lips curled into a wicked smile. "Surprised to see me, dear sister," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "I've come to reclaim what should have been mine." "Anastasia?" Cinderella gasped, barely recognizing her stepsister. Her voice trembled with disbelief and dread. "What happened to you?" "Life," Anastasia hissed, stepping forward. "You think you won, don't you? That your little fairy tale ended perfectly, leaving the rest of us behind to rot. But you were wrong, Cinderella. You always were." Her eyes blazed with fury as she spoke, her fingers tracing the dark silk of her gown. "While you were dancing in your castle, I found something far more powerful than a prince." The sorcerer remained silent beside her, his magic simmering beneath the surface, waiting to be unleashed. He looked at Cinderella with cold, calculating eyes, as if assessing her every move. Cinderella's breath caught in her throat. "I never wanted to take anything from you," she said, trying to reach Anastasia through the bitterness. "You have to know that." "Liar!" Anastasia's voice cracked like thunder, her anger bursting forth. "You stole everything. The life I was supposed to have, the happiness that should have been mine." Her voice dropped to a low, dangerous whisper. "But now I've found a way to take it back." The sorcerer raised a hand, his dark magic swirling in the air like a storm gathering force. Cinderella could feel its oppressive weight pressing down on her, freezing her in place. "You don't understand what you're doing, Anastasia," Cinderella shouted, her voice filled with desperation. "This magic, it's dangerous. It will destroy everything, including you." Anastasia laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "You think I care? Power is all that matters now. Power that I control, not you." The prince arrived at Cinderella's side, sword drawn, eyes narrowed with determination. "Anastasia," he called out, his voice steady but commanding. "I don't know what you think you're gaining by doing this, but you're making a terrible mistake." "Am I?" Anastasia sneered. "You of all people should understand. You were born into this life, this luxury. You never had to claw your way to the top. You don't know what it's like to live in the shadow of someone who's done nothing to deserve it." Before the prince could respond, the sorcerer unleashed a blast of dark energy. Charming barely managed to dodge the attack, rolling to the side as the magic scorched the earth where he had stood. The sorcerer's voice was deep and unsettling. "Enough talk. It's time we end this." Cinderella stepped forward, standing between her husband and the danger that loomed before them. "I won't let you hurt him," she said, her voice strong, despite the fear gnawing at her insides. Anastasia's eyes flared with hatred. "You think you can stop me? You, the girl who needed magic just to get a prince to notice her?" "I'm not that girl anymore," Cinderella replied, her tone unyielding. "And you don't have to be this." The words seemed to strike something deep within Anastasia, but only for a brief moment. She faltered, her eyes clouding with doubt, but the sorcerer placed a hand on her shoulder, his dark power surging into her, rekindling the cold fire in her gaze. "It's too late," Anastasia spat, lifting her hands toward the sky. "I will tear this kingdom apart if I must, but I will get what's mine." Before anyone could react, the sorcerer summoned a violent storm of dark energy, casting it toward Cinderella and the prince. But as the attack neared, something incredible happened. A burst of golden light erupted from Cinderella's hands, forming a protective barrier around her and Charming. The dark magic crashed against it, unable to penetrate the radiant shield. Anastasia staggered back in shock. "What? What is this?" Even the sorcerer seemed taken aback, his dark eyes narrowing as he studied the light surrounding Cinderella. "Impossible," he muttered. "You have the magic of the ancients." Cinderella looked down at her hands, glowing with a soft, golden light. She didn't understand it, but she could feel its power coursing through her veins, strong and pure. It was as if the magic had always been there, waiting to be awakened. Anastasia's face twisted with fury. "No, I won't let you win again." With a scream, she unleashed another wave of dark energy, but this time, Cinderella was ready. She focused, and the golden light expanded, pushing back against the darkness. The two opposing forces clashed in the air, creating a tempest of swirling magic that shook the very foundations of the castle. The sorcerer, realizing his advantage was slipping away, raised both hands, channeling every ounce of his dark power into the battle. But the more he pushed, the brighter Cinderella's light grew, her strength fueled not by hatred or anger, but by love and the desire to protect those she cared about. In a final, desperate move, Anastasia lunged at Cinderella, but as their eyes met, Cinderella saw something that broke her heart. Beneath the hatred, the bitterness, and the rage, Anastasia was still the broken girl she had always been, a girl who had never known love, only envy. With a tear in her eye, Cinderella whispered, "I'm sorry." And then, with one last surge of golden light, the darkness was gone. The sorcerer collapsed, his magic drained, and Anastasia fell to her knees, her black gown dissolving into ashes. The cold fire in her eyes extinguished, leaving behind only sorrow. Cinderella knelt beside her fallen stepsister, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's over now," she said softly. Anastasia, broken and defeated, looked up at her with tear-filled eyes. "Why didn't you just let me go?" "Because you're still my family," Cinderella replied gently, "and it's never too late to change." "You should have stayed in your place, Cinderella," Anastasia sneered, her voice filled with malice. "The world you stole from us is about to crumble, and I'm here to make sure of it." Anastasia, "What are you doing?" Cinderella cried out, her voice trembling. "You took everything," Anastasia yelled, her voice echoing through the courtyard. "You stole the life that was supposed to be ours, and now I've found the means to take it back." Without another word, Anastasia flicked her wrist, and the sorcerer raised his hands, conjuring a wave of dark energy that surged toward the prince. Charming barely managed to deflect the attack, but the force sent him sprawling to the ground. Cinderella rushed to his side, helping him to his feet. "We have to fight back," he whispered. "But be careful. There's more to this than we can see." Determined, Cinderella stepped forward, facing her stepsister. "This isn't about me, Anastasia. It's about power, and you've been consumed by it. Whatever this sorcerer has promised you, it will only bring ruin." But Anastasia's eyes were full of hatred, and her response was another burst of magic aimed directly at Cinderella. In a flash, Cinderella felt a sudden surge of strength as something deep within her awakened. She raised her hand instinctively, and to her surprise, a golden light exploded from her fingertips, forming a shield that deflected the attack. Both Anastasia and the sorcerer stared at her in shock. What is this?" Cinderella gasped, looking at her glowing hands. The sorcerer, eyes narrowing beneath his hood, muttered, "You possess the ancient magic. I should have known, but it won't save you." Anastasia grinned wickedly, her anger flaring once more. "This changes nothing. You're still going to lose." A fierce battle erupted in the courtyard. Prince Charming fought valiantly alongside the castle guards, but it was Cinderella and Anastasia who commanded the most attention. The two former sisters clashed, magical energies colliding in a flurry of light and darkness. "You've been warned, Cinderella," Anastasia shrieked, unleashing a deadly barrage of spells. "This kingdom was never meant for you." But as the battle raged on, Cinderella realized something important. Anastasia wasn't just angry about the past. She was scared, desperate to claim a power she believed was stolen from her. With a final push of strength, Cinderella enveloped Anastasia in a sphere of golden light, immobilizing her. "This doesn't have to end in violence," Cinderella said, her voice calm yet firm. "You've let anger consume you, but you can still change." Anastasia struggled against the light, her face contorted with fury. "Why would you offer me mercy?" "Because we were family once," Cinderella replied softly. "And deep down, you're not a monster." For a moment, the darkness in Anastasia's eyes flickered, and her body trembled. The sorcerer, sensing his grip on her loosening, raised his hand to strike both sisters down. But before he could act, Prince Charming appeared behind him, swiftly knocking him unconscious with the hilt of his sword. Anastasia collapsed to the ground, the dark magic fading from her body. As the last traces of evil disappeared, she looked up at Cinderella with tear-filled eyes. "I was wrong. I let my jealousy ruin everything." Cinderella knelt beside her, offering a hand. It's never too late to make things right. In the end, peace returned to the kingdom. The sorcerer was imprisoned, and Anastasia, broken and remorseful, was given a second chance. Though the scars of the battle remained, Cinderella and Charming's bond grew stronger, forged in the fires of love, forgiveness, and action. And as the clock struck midnight, Cinderella knew that her story was far from over. This was only the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with both love and the strength to face any challenge that lay ahead.
The Stories book is a captivating collection of tales that traverse diverse genres and emotions, spanning the realms of fantasy, science fiction, romance, and mystery. Each narrative is a journey into the unexpected, weaving intricate plots and compelling characters. With a skillful blend of vivid imagery and thought-provoking themes, this anthology invites readers to explore the depths of imagination and discover the universal threads that connect us all. From heartwarming moments to spine. We hope you enjoyed these captivating video stories. Be sure to subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming content like this. Thanks for watching and keep spreading the video story.